morning or good evening, listeners. I'm Matthew Tung. Joining me today is Michelle Law. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Hi Matthew, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Where are you right now?
I actually just returned to Vancouver and I'm almost done with my 2-week quarantine and I came back from Shanghai, China. And where are you right now, Matthew?
I'm right now in Taipei. This is one of the most, I don't know, it's kind of weird here because like everything is just way too normal. I'm assuming that's a lot different, compared to probably what's happening in Vancouver. What's going on there?
I actually haven't been outside yet because I've been in quarantine, but it doesn't seem like the situation is that bad currently. Well, it was pretty normal in Shanghai in China, so comparatively, I think the situation here is pretty okay. It's kind of under control, but people are still going out and stuff.
That's pretty cool. Okay, and joining me, another person will be my one of my favorites, also one of my best friends, Darius Farhoumand. How are you, Darius?
Hi, Matt. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Where are you at right now?
I am in Los Angeles, California, and I have been here for some 6 months, and it's been great. I have been dealing with, I don't know, 37 degrees Celsius weather, which is 100 and plus. So dry heat, which actually we've been getting humidity this year, which is really weird. Probably because maybe there's less pollution. But yeah, it's been good. I've been making the best of my time.
I'm surprised you use Celsius as a metric of temperature.
Yeah, no, well, it's because I have a lot of, experience traveling outside of the States, and my network has expanded. I know a lot of people that use Celsius more so than people that use Fahrenheit, actually. So I'm just used to using Celsius. A lot of my family uses Celsius, so.
Okay. Darius, tell us a little bit about yourself then.
Okay, so I am a bassoon player. I'm an incoming senior at NYU, just like you are, and I study bassoon performance. And through NYU, I've been able to do a lot of really cool things. Um, I've been able to play in really wonderful places like Carnegie Hall, and I've been able to go on tours and stuff in Europe and Asia, and I'm not quite sure yet what I'm doing in the next few years, like for the future, especially in the performance realm. Things have kind of been flipped upside down. But I'm also planning to stay at NYU for a 5th year until 2022 to get a master's in music education through a 5-year program. So that's nice.
That's pretty cool. Michelle, your turn. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am also a rising senior, but I am not studying music unlike Matthew and Darius. I'm currently an econ major and studying at the University of British Columbia up north in Vancouver. And for my extracurriculars, I have been singing in an a cappella group for the past 3 years, 1 year being in a competitive one, where we go compete at the ICCAs, which stands for International Championship Collegiate of Acapella, I believe. And other than singing, I have been classically trained on the piano since I was very young. Just stereotypical Asian family, with the ABRSM and all the royal certificates. And then I started playing school orchestra, which is actually where I met Matthew. And we played throughout middle school and high school, unfortunately. And then, so yeah, so I played a few instruments and I've been singing quite a lot lately.
Yeah, Michelle and I go like way back. Unlike Darius, Darius and I have been meeting since 4 years, and actually Darius and I have started a project, which I won't fully disclose, but Darius and I have been working together on a lot of projects for quite a while, whereas Michelle and I have been friends way back then. So both of them kind of met through us. Met through me, and this is how this podcast originally started. And I think before our audience gets into gets into our content today, which we'll be talking about why we wanted to build this podcast and why we originally started on this podcast, and also why we love why we love music so much. As the person who kind of started this podcast, I want to kind of talk about what was my original intent on building this podcast. I went to Darius, and Darius thought I was crazy because he thinks I was way removed from music since I haven't been playing that much, and I've only been listening to music. But I originally came out to Darius. Darius, what exactly did I tell you?
Well, I don't know. You just came up to me. You texted me one day, and you're like, "Dude, I want to make a podcast. I want to make a podcast." And I was like, "A podcast? Like, about what and how?" And he's like, "I don't know. I just want to talk music with you and have it be recorded so that we can always remember what we talk about and so other people can be listening." So I was, originally I was a little hesitant, but I gave it some thought, and I was like, maybe this might be, somebody else might enjoy listening to this, whether it's actually factual or entirely fictitious. At any rate, it might be entertaining. So I thought, you know what, let's just give it a shot. So that's why I accepted your offer.
Accepted? I never gave you an offer. Come on, man. Yeah, I mean, originally my thought was, I was so far removed from music, and I just wanted to talk about music. And I've been listening. So there were a lot of other podcasts that I've been listening to, things such as Motley Fool. I've also been listening to The Economist, and I didn't really enjoy The Economist as much because it was more news oriented. Whereas I was listening to Motley Fool, I was like, this sounds like a format that I really enjoy, and it sounds really fun. I was like, but I don't want to talk about stocks every day. So let's talk about music, something that I have loved for a while. By the way, for listeners who don't really know about me, I actually study music business. So my major is actually a combination between Darius's and Michelle's. So after Darius, Darius kind of ignored me because he was busy with his bassoon, whereas he should be busy with me. No, I'm just kidding.
To clarify, I think maybe it just went in different directions. We went in different directions more than actual ignoring. But
yeah,
anyway, continue.
That's a better way to put it. And then so I started talking to Michelle. That my conversation with Michelle was rather intense because we go way back. But she has a more entrepreneurial spirit. Michelle, what exactly did we talk about? I was a little drunk that day, so you're gonna have to help me out here.
Oh, you were? Oh, no wonder you said it was a little bit intense because I was what?
No, I was drinking that day.
Oh man, I mean, yeah. Initially, same as Darius, and I was like, "What? This guy's crazy. Like, what? Who's gonna listen to us? What do you want this to be? Like, what do you want to make out of this?" And I remember that time. I guess both of us were really busy with our internships and stuff, so I didn't think much about this. I was like, okay, this is a kind of a cool idea, and music has always been one of my passions, my hobbies, but I've been putting that off for a while now. So I guess, all of us are kind of in quarantine still, and with this freaking global pandemic that has been ongoing, I guess it's pretty cool to start a project like this, which I've never done before. And yeah, ended up calling Matthew maybe a week or two later and had some pretty cool ideas together, which I think you're a bit over ambitious, but very passionate about all your musical ideas, ranging from classical music to stock prices of some musical companies, etc., etc. A wide range of ideas.
Yeah, I mean, for listeners, I kind of know. I wouldn't say I'm like a full encyclopedia, but I kind of know the surface of many things. Whereas Darius is a full blown, great bassoonist, and he knows a lot about the classical world. Whereas Michelle Law is one of the few people that I go to about pop music, because I don't listen to that many pop music. So she's one of the few people that I actually go to. She's like the go-to person. She knows so much. I mean, listeners should know about this. And Darius, he's one of those people who he's my roommate, by the way, and then he would just come to me one night, actually, he'll be like, do you think that Schubert is better than Beethoven or Beethoven is better than Schubert? And that argument, oh my god.
It would go for days and weeks and months with no truly answered agreement between either of us. We never agreed.
I was very irritated. And also Michelle is an economist here, is our economist here, whereas I'm just a person who kind of knows the surface of everything. So that's sort of how the mesh of our group is. So what is your philosophy on the on this specific title? Why is it called SUR?
Yeah, why is there a space?
Yeah, why is there a space?
Syllables.
Okay, guys. Here's how it's gonna work. So, SUR ROUND SOUND. When you say these two words, it comes out as 3 syllables when you're talking, right? And by breaking it up like this, as we've done in our title for this podcast, we take SUR ROUND and we put it separate. That gives us a new way of thinking. It helps us kind of, by breaking up the 2 words into 3 different parts, it makes us kind of like see that we can perceive the way we look at this in different ways, kind of with music as well. In music, you know, if you're looking at I don't know, if you're looking at an album of a bunch of different tracks, you could either look at each track, you could look at each track individually and play that one track and say, that's my favorite track. And then you could look at one other track and say, oh, that goes really well with that track. Or you could say track 1 and track 7 are better than track 2 and track 9. Or you could even go as far as to say track 3 alone is the best. The other 15 are bad. But the idea behind SUR ROUND SOUND is that this might be a way of you taking a look at the whole philosophical album and realizing it better for yourself and realizing it more for each other. And by having this conversation, by having these conversations and doing this podcast, we are not only like expanding our own individual horizons on music, the industry, and what we know about the world, but we're also kind of opening ourselves up and keeping ourselves students in the long run. SUR ROUND SOUND.
I love this title. It's very profound.
One question, which is the essence of our topic today, is what got you guys, let's start with Darius. What got you started in loving music? I think this process is one that a lot of musicians go through, and it's something that they think hard and long about. But this is a very crucial process. And as a musician, what was your experience like? Could you give our audience a little bit insight and also how you got into this?
Well, my beginnings in music came from a very, very natural, like, unaffected environment. I grew up with like music therapy. I had a music therapist that my mom used to send me to that taught me how to like sing, but I couldn't really sing in harmony. I just learned how to like speak lyrics in form with rhythm, and that was one of my earliest experiences where like I started seeing music as kind of fun. And from then on, I started going into a series of different musical instruments. Of course, everybody in elementary school had to do recorder, but before that, I actually got one of those mini violins for children. But that didn't work because I and I had bad posture, so that was boring, and I didn't like holding my arms up. So then we went to the flute. Again, we had the arm problem, but it was easier. And then when we got to clarinet, that kind of stayed, and with clarinet, my love for music really took off, because when I got to middle school, I had a band director that used to give us like a lot of pop songs and like arranged movie medleys and stuff that made like performing really fun, concerts really fun. I started to see it as a way of people just coming together other than like going out or like visiting families or whatever. So I started, my perception of music started to become more multifaceted. And at a young age, I didn't realize that. I couldn't articulate that, what I'm talking about now. But but I realized that had a really deep, profound meaning on me. And when I got to high school and I started the bassoon in 8th grade, so right before high school. And when I started, I found that it was really something that the sound of the instrument, I just fell in love with. Now, to clarify, one of the viewers may be asking, why did this guy pick bassoon? Why did this guy end up on bassoon? I thought he was doing other stuff. I started bassoon not necessarily by choice. When I was in 8th grade, my middle school band director said that we needed a bassoon player in the ensemble. And what he did was he picked the last chair clarinet player. And I thought at the time I was hot stuff. But, I was last chair. I was in my own little world sitting in the back. So he gave me this big giant wood bazooka thing, and he's like, here, learn how to use it. And so in a way I'm partially self-taught. But eventually I found a teacher through school, through the community that helped me out and made me begin to admire the quirkiness. And yeah, a lot of it just came really, really by chance and like very not controlled. Because I know a lot of my friends and colleagues in college now, people I've met, people Matt and I know, they've been trained. They went through some kind of musical training throughout their early years, whether it's in an art school or like piano lessons from age 1 or whatever. And that didn't happen for me. A lot of what brought me to New York City and a lot of what brought me a lot of my skills came very naturally. So those are my beginnings.
For listeners who don't know what the bassoon is, could you give the listener a little bit insight on what the instrument is?
The bassoon is a double reeded instrument that is red and kind of sounds at a lower pitch than the clarinet, but has a sort of roundness and color like the oboe, which is another double reeded instrument. A double reed is basically a reed, a piece of cane or a piece of bamboo. Actually, it's bamboo that opens up and is made of 2 different blades. And the way you produce pitch is you blow through the blades to create a vibration. And what makes the bassoon so low isn't just its size and its thickness, it's also its length, the length at which the air travels, because it's a wind instrument. It goes through the vocal all the way down to the bottom of the bassoon, makes a full 180 turn, and comes all the way up through the bell. And the majority of the sound that comes out of the instrument is produced both in a combination from the bell and the open tone holes that you're not pressing on. The repertoire that calls for it is almost always on the bass line, and also in addition, better compositions, more classical compositions treat bassoon kind of like a tenor, and the bassoon is very commonly known across the world as the wind version of the cello because it has the exact same range and the same kind of virtuosity can be made from it, but just in a different sort of color.
Yeah, in a more simpler term, because Darius kind of spoke in a more professional term. In a simpler term, basically, I could understand bassoon as like the lower register or the lower sound of the woodwind family. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. It is the bottom of the family.
And I know that for a fact that although, despite the fact that bassoon is probably one of not the most popular instrument in the classical world, but it's one of the most beautiful instrument. I mean, the wood sound is just absolutely gorgeous, especially when the melody sings. I mean, no one trumps that. It's just got such a tender color into it. However, when you were talking about your high school years, what was that one music specifically, and what was that one music that triggers you? Why did that music trigger you? Because I know that when we have a lot of conversations, you talked a lot about your high school years when you were listening to Borodin or you were playing Borodin, and I know Borodin being one of your favorite music. What was that one music that you really, really loved and that just got you started?
Well, the story behind me and Borodin, it's kind of a large story, but to kind of abridge it for us, it's almost a sort of personal connection. My earliest memory in life was when I was playing with my grandfather, my mom's dad, and I didn't know much about him, but he really gave me a lot of love back then, and he died immediately, like a few days after that memory from cancer. And for many years when I was growing up, I was constantly searching and yearning to learn more about him because I felt like I didn't know enough, and I felt like I lost a chance to I don't know, connect with someone. And one day on the radio, maybe like 6 years ago, we were listening to classical, and I was doing some homework or something in the house, and my mom just like bursts out crying, and I run into the room, and I'm like, "Mom, what's wrong? What's going on?" And she hears the Polovetzian dances from Prince Igor, the opera by Borodin, and she says that my dad used to sing this song. He loved this song. He knew the lyrics and he used to sing it. And that was where that really moved me to see her reaction to that piece. And then once I started to listen to it from an older standpoint, from a more classically knowledgeable standpoint, I realized, the beauty behind the music, and that's kind of what made me obsess over it. When I first met you, when I used to talk about the board, and it was because I had recently learned something personal about it.
Wow, what a wonderful story. I mean, I feel like a lot of classical listeners really can relate to your story. How about you, Michelle? What's your story?
Yeah, because listening to Darius, I think you have a very personal connection with music since a very young age, and it's actually really touching to hear that you wanted to learn more about a specific piece because of your connection with one of your close relatives. But for me, so as mentioned before, I started learning the classical piano when I was really young, and I guess I came from a family of musicians. My aunt actually taught me piano. That's how I got it started, and I've been playing that until middle school. I got a little bit bored with classical music, and I started listening to a lot of pop music, and I was like, oh, that sounds very interesting. So I started playing covers with on the piano, but it wasn't with singing. It was just strictly, using my ear, playing by ear, basically. And then as I realized, oh, I have kind of a talent for it, I started asking my friends who could sing better than me, and we started making covers. And after I entered high school, that's when I discovered the wonders of a cappella, and I became I guess you could say, musical director of that group for most of my high school career. So actually singing dominated like the second half of my music career, I would say, and more on the contemporary music side. And in terms of classical, I also learned the violin, but that didn't really inspire me much with it because I was just, it's a school instrument and it was kind of required to take some sort of instrument in addition to piano with like in a group setting. And actually, I wanted to say something about playing in a group because I'm pretty sure Matthew feels the same way. Um, Music, it doesn't work on your own. In order to tell a story, you have to make music with people whether it's a quartet, an ensemble, or orchestra, or even a cappella, right? So I just wanted to say that I feel like music is where I found people that I really connected with, and I used music as a means, well, not a means, but as a way to bring people together. So I feel like over the years, I've kind of discovered how music has meant for me in that way.
That's awesome.
And
that's really super cool.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it in the nail. Music definitely has that bridging, like kind of that bridging kind of aspect to it that really bridges people together. I mean, there's so many research paper done talking about the significance of how people how people come together, and usually when it comes to the world of arts, when they really talk about it, art is not something. Art is not like a food. It's not something that it requires you to eat or it requires you to do every day. It's not a need per se, but the reason why I remember reading a research paper about it that the reason why these things exist, things such as sport, things such as entertainment, and things especially like music, is that we're actually bonded through this idea called the groupishness gene, and this is written by an NYU professor called Jonathan Haidt. He sort of talks about this idea of the groupishness gene, and speaking of this groupishness gene, Michelle Law and I, like we've talked about before, Michelle Law and I have gone way back, all the way till middle school, and Michelle Law was actually talking about this band that they created, or also cover music, and I was actually I don't really want to disclose this, but Michelle, am I correct to say that you guys the band had 3 people, right? It was 3 girls, including you.
I wouldn't really call it a band because there was just basically one piano accompaniment and one guitar and 2 singers basically. So it wasn't really a band. It was more of a cover group, let's say. That's how it started.
Right. Okay.
And then I started forming a, well-rounded band in high school with like the saxophone, the drums, bass, and bass guitar and everything.
All right, this is the embarrassing story. So within this group, I actually had a crush on this girl, which is in this band, and
this is actually one of my best friends in high school.
Yes, and this is actually how I got to know Michelle. This is actually my first interaction with Michelle when it comes to music, because I was like, wait, the girl that I liked is a pretty good singer, and then the girl beside her is a great singer, and she's so talented. So what happened was I wanted to get to know her. I approached her. And then she started talking to me about random crap. And then one day our middle school teacher started talking about this idea of perfect pitch. And then everyone pointed to Michelle. And by the way, perfect pitch is not a skill, it's actually a talent. And she's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay, yeah, it's debatable. But I personally think perfect pitch is a talent. Anyways, and then this is how I approached Michelle. I think Michelle's. This is one of the most.
I don't even remember this. I'm really curious.
Don't be curious.
Well, another thing, Michelle, that you should keep in mind is that with a relationship like this, where you guys have known each other for many years, maybe even like 10 years, memories warp the further away they get. So some of the storytelling and the plot design of the way he's phrased his story, his memory, may not be exactly what you remember. So take it all with a grain of salt.
That's very true. Very true.
Well, thank you, Darius.
This is Matthew's perspective.
This is my own little bubble that I just had to put it out there. But I mean, so later I think we've collabed many times, Michelle and I, and one of the major collabs that we have done was the dance. Remember? It was the APAC dance one with the butterfly. Right. That was pretty cool, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was. I think it was for a Chinese New Year assembly, so it was a pretty big performance in front of the whole high school. So we collaborated with our school dance team of maybe 10 or 20 people, and they danced traditional. Was it traditional Chinese dance?
No, I think it was
right.
Yeah, it was
Ballet. Was it ballet?
It was a modern dance. I know it was modern. It was like a combination of ballet and a little bit Chinese feature. So yeah, that was actually one of the many times Michelle and I collaborated. Yeah. And that's how I got to know her.
Actually a very difficult piece.
Yeah,
which
and
you played very well.
And also you kind of talked about there's one other thing that you talked about and I think listeners should know about is that you actually started as a classical musician. Well, not really musician, but more like classically trained musician, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of that classical skills and the technical part of the music helped me a lot with what I'm doing mostly now with pop music and a cappella, because there isn't a right way to learn how to arrange a cappella music and or any contemporary music really. So I feel like that technical training I got when I was younger helped me with my intonation, how to distinguish between different pitch, what genres appeal to me, and all those musicality that really helped me form my musical personality, something today. So
Yeah, but what exactly made you change? Because I feel like you were such a wonderful player. I think you're one of the very few players who have such a multi-talent. By the way, for listeners who don't know, she plays. She's a great singer. She plays the piano very well. She we also met in orchestra class. Is that correct?
yeah, I think that's when we first met.
And she also knows how to play the bass. By the way, she has this incredibly great studio. I go to her house sometimes just to visit her studio.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny because my dad actually built the studio. He's actually a guitarist. That's where most of my music got influenced because growing up, I listened to a lot of like heavy metal, rock music because he was in a band. And I think that's a big reason why I kind of switched to pop music later on because I felt like, okay, I have a choice to pick what kind of music I like and want to perform and to pursue.
There's one question that I want to ask you. Also, I asked Darius about this. What was that one specific music that really triggered you to like love music? Or one
That's a
moment. It doesn't have to be a music. It can be a moment as well.
It's a very difficult question. I guess the big transformation I would say would still be in middle school when I first discovered pop music. I guess I got bored with classical music. I know which might offend, a lot of people, but I just,
It's
yeah,
fine.
because
It's understandable.
yeah, because I know there's a lot of analytical stuff that can, you can dig deep with classical music, but in terms of playing, I just wanted to switch it up and to pursue something new, I guess. And I think back then, Adele was a big thing
Oh
back in
yeah.
our days.
I
Yeah, so
remember
I think
that.
that's what, yeah, when she came out with Rolling in the Deep was were the days. Those are the days.
It was 21, right?
Or 19, yeah.
No,
Those were the
yeah,
two.
19 was her first album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think um, I guess it's Adele's kind of pop music genre that I wanted to emulate through my musical accompaniment and singing. So I guess she inspired me a little, I could say that.
A little. I think it's more like a lot because you're such a wonderful singer. I mean, listeners should
Thank you.
really know about this. Honestly, though, but
Thank you.
what was really interesting was that she actually talked about how she kind of steered away because I got another friend who was also originally started as a classical violinist, and he is actually a great bass player in Taiwan. Remember Julian Wittich, Michelle?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and he actually also just really hated classical repertoires, and then he just completely gave up. He was like, Vaughn just doesn't speak to me, because it's esoteric, it's difficult, it's ridiculously difficult, and it just didn't speak to him. And I feel like, I feel like this choice of what you actually play is actually very crucial, whether it's the type of instrument, whether it's the type of music. And I feel like listeners, I know Darius is classically oriented, and I'm more classically oriented, but I also love pop music. And Michelle is more geared towards pop music. I know that listeners have to realize that we don't discriminate music per se. We actually love music at the core of itself. I don't know. I don't really know how to put it. It's more like the music itself is what we love. It's not really of what type of music that we discriminate. And I feel like listeners have the right to listen to that different kinds of music, and that's sort of something that a lot of people try to discriminate. Oh, you listen to pop music, especially in the classical world, because I encounter them. Oh my god, you listen to pop music? Get out of here! It's so simple. It's so rude. It's just a bunch of junk. Um, insert bleep word. Have you encountered that, Darius?
It honestly, in my experience, depends on the context and depends on the place. If let's say, if I'm at the Met watching an opera, that kind of behavior is like very common, like right there. If you walk in there with a pair of jeans, you may not be let to your seat. But if you go into, let's say, I don't know, a rock concert in a nice shirt, in a nice suit, that'll also look very awkward. So in my experience, I have found different kinds of people to be at different kinds of uh, concerts and different kinds of events, and that also dictates personality too. But the people that really, in my opinion, the people that really are not multifaceted, but the people that are really versatile in music, people that really love listening to different kinds of music, those are the kind of people I generally find wanting to go to anything everywhere, anything anywhere, even country music. You know, I hate country music, and a lot of people do not like country music in the classical world and in the non-classical world. It's really a Midwest of the United States personal thing, and religious. You know, it's just not music. Aside from the lyrics and the cultural history behind country music, it's just not melodically interesting at all. That's why we crap on country music. But anyway, in my opinion, the ultimate listener is the one that can go to a country music concert at a saloon or a bar or something and feel moved by it, or feel like they learned something from it, or feel like they are a different person after hearing that person sing, that singer, or that, I don't know, that banjo, and just, you know, than they were before, than they were if they decided not to go to that concert.
Yeah, I guess. Michelle, you want to say anything about it? Because you're in the popular music world. So, what are your experiences?
I was gonna say, I think Darius brought up something very interesting, is that the music that you are exposed to, or your musical background, or what you're willing to accept and to discover, really reflects your personality. And
Exactly.
that all ties into how you interact with music and the people that you play it with. Because a lot of times I find that without the people, you don't know if you can make that music, right? If it's just with a different set of people.
Totally.
I'm sure.
I just want to jump in and add to that what you just said. That
Yeah,
was
go
so
ahead.
profound, because from my experience today, like, you know, when there's no pandemic going on, if let's say I'm in some kind of orchestra program or chamber music or anything, just playing with people, if I'm playing with people for a very short amount of time that I've never met before, the music itself, the product that we come up with, isn't as captivating to a listener as it might be to someone that you know we've known. And that's something that I long for. That gives me nostalgia from high school. It's that when you're in high school, I'm sure Matthew and Michelle, you both can agree on this. You spent so much time together every day, like what, 8 hours a day, walking around the halls, saying hi, getting boba, bubble tea, eating, doing all these kinds of things. And that shapes the way you make music and the way you execute things too. It changes your approach on I don't want to get too philosophical, even though we already have, changes your approach on life.
I don't know about boba changing entirely my life. I would say that boba did change the quality of my life, but it doesn't really change. But one thing I think one thing is that very interesting is that yes, music does reflect a person's personality, and I think that's very crucial for one to know. That music has such a profound impact to one person's personality. I was talking because I'm currently interning at a band coming to an end. And I was actually talking to this one person about music, and she's not a fervent listener, but she does like to listen to a lot of songs. And we were actually talking about what type of music she likes to listen to. And she was like, I like to listen to sentimental ones, and those really slow. And this girl she's in her early 20s. She's 21, I think.
Sentimental can mean a lot of things. Anyway, continue.
Yes, it does. And her specific definition of sentimental is like those slow Chinese music. And I know Michelle interacts with these music plenty because she loves canto. She doesn't not love only canto music, but canto music is one of her primary categories and catalogs of repertoire that she goes into. But she starts talking about sentimental music as she starts talking about slow. I was like, these young people, why would they listen to these really slow music? I was just wondering why was that happening. But this also touched upon like things like, you know, music really reflects a person.
Yeah, you know, it's very interesting you brought up how Chinese music is stereotypically slow and sentimental, because I realized traditionally Chinese pop music has a lot of it focuses a lot of focuses a lot on the lyrics and the emotional value because I think we can both agree that the Chinese characters mean a lot more than I mean one character can mean a lot compared to English, which is why I think Chinese artists have traditionally put a lot of emphasis on lyrics rather than changing up the style of the music. And actually, recently, I've been listening to a lot of R&B, soul, jazzy kind of, I would say mando pop, just Chinese music in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been very inspired because a lot of them have some sort of background studying music in the US and they mix English bit of English rap with Chinese music, and they kind of add like different cool jazzy elements to music that you wouldn't normally accept in like the Chinese context. Because you also have to take into consideration a different cultural background, I guess. And traditionally, I think Chinese pop has always been a little bit more conservative. So I'm actually very appreciative of the fact that artists in the very very recent years have started to explore that kind of Chinese music, namely artists like Jay Shen, Sheon, 9M88 or Joanne Baba, Julia Wu, etc. And listeners who may be interested can check them out on Spotify and stuff.
Yeah, one question I want to ask you before we wrap this up. What are your thoughts on rap and also the hip hop culture kind of embedded into the Chinese pop culture? Because personally, I don't really like it.
Well, Matthew, I have to show you new songs that I've discovered recently because I will persuade you into liking this type of music. I won't force you. I will just inspire you.
So does that mean we're going into our music of the week section?
Yes, but we'll talk about that after this show. So before we wrap this up, I want to I like to do this segment where we talk with the people on the show to talk about music of the week that they're going to look into or listen to this week. So Darius, let's start with you. What's the music of the week that you're going to listen or look into, and what is that recommendation?
So great, thank you for asking, Matt. I think before I go off of before I tell you where I'm moving with my ear, I think I should tell you where I've been. So to give you some context, and I would love to hear from Michelle in the same sort of way. This month, August, I've had, aside from like my work and practicing and stuff like that, I've had some downtime recently to start playing Nintendo Switch games. And I know it's already like going in a really bad direction, but the particular game that I got is a very new recent game called it's a Mario game called Paper Mario: The Origami King. And the basic story, in short, of this game is you're Mario, but you're paper, and it's in a storybook, and the world has been taken over by Japanese origami. And you have to go around the world and make everything flat again. But aside from that very, very controversial story, the music in that score for the game is very instrumental and very, very in-depth, and has a great deal of variety, from orchestral to pop to like techno and other sorts of weird combinations. And I've recently been just listening to a lot of video game music, especially from that game as I've been going through it. I just about finished it this past couple of days. And in a weird way, it's kind of brought me, kind of recentered my vision and my outlook on music and what I like to listen for. And recently, as I've been getting ready for school next week, I've kind of been looking at Mahler, because Mahler is a composer that kind of has that same sort of similar versatility and virtuosity in simple ways, which this is a very stretched comparison to video games, kind of makes me feel as well. Because video game music, you can go for a minute and a half and then it has to loop, as I'm looping right now as I'm talking, which I should probably move on from. So, yeah, I'm moving towards Mahler.
So, one question I got for you, speaking of video games, I know you and I have played Switch a lot. What's your favorite video game character that you enjoy when you're playing Switch?
Depends on the game, but if we're, let's say, talking about a game that has a lot of characters, like, I don't know, Super Smash Brothers, I would probably go with, Donkey Kong.
Oh
I
my
would
god.
go with Donkey Kong.
Oh no!
He grabs, he throws, and he's got nice teeth. So,
Oh my gosh. No, this is why I don't like to play against him. All right, let's move to Michelle. What's your music of the week?
I was gonna ask Matthew, which character would you go for?
I'll go for the simple one. I would just go for Mario.
So you're basic then.
Yes, I'm basic.
Lame.
God.
Lame.
Okay, Michelle, what's the music you're listening to for this week?
I guess I touched upon this a little bit before, but R&B, Mando pop, and it's interesting to see that recently a lot of artists have been trying to find a balance between Chinese ballads and more westernized songs, and implementing hip hop or R&B into it as well. And I previously have mentioned some independent, more indie artists that I found on Spotify and have been kind of low-key obsessed with them. That I've mentioned before, the three artists. I'm not going to go into that again. So,
Michelle, sorry to interrupt you, but would you like to give any like specific song recommendations for our viewers?
actually, I'm going to pull up my Spotify right now. I sent Matthew the song the first time we had a call, actually. I kind of recommend him more to be more open to different kinds of pop music. It's called.
I've been working on him as well.
Right? Yep. It's called I Could, and the artist is Sunkissed, Sunkis. So that is one song that I would recommend.
I Could by Sunkissed. Great, thank you.
Okay, so one question for you. I know that when we talk about Chinese pop, we can't. It's hard to not think about the world of China and the food itself. What is one Chinese food that you love the most?
For
We're
sure,
opening a
dim
Pandora's
sum.
box.
Dim sum for sure, because I'm Cantonese. So definitely, anytime, any day, I would always go for dim sum. And it's also a great time to spend time with family and friends. Always a good time.
Well, I know you didn't ask me, Matthew, but my favorite Chinese food is duck. I
Oh
love
my
any
God.
kind of duck. Duck is my favorite thing ever. I like Peking duck. I like horseshoe duck. I like any kind of duck you put on a plate in front of me, and I'll eat it.
Well, I'm gonna go against Darius's favorite character and also the duck itself. So I'm gonna vote for Michelle's music. I Could.
So, Matthew, what about you then? What would you say is your music of the week? What have you been listening to, and where are you going?
Recently, I've been very obsessed with things related to Disney, and hint, hint, that might be a future podcast. So the music that I'm gonna look into are two specific movies that they are and did come out recently. One is Mulan, the other one is Hamilton. Hamilton is, I think, most American viewers would know. Hamilton is one of the superstars of the recent Tony Awards, and Mulan is a story that's based on. I think it's based on a Chinese poem that if viewers are curious, we could talk about it. But these are the two music, and I really love Hamilton. Hamilton is one of those. These two music, it's funny that I chose these two because they're so culturally embedded into their own culture. One is related to Chinese history, the other one is related to American history. And it's very interesting that one music specifically, especially Hamilton, how rap, the culture of rap, and also the culture of hip hop is so embedded into the entire, and is so well integrated into the entire American history when it comes to Hamilton.
Nice. That's very interesting. And I just wanted to bring back one little thing. I think before we kind of wrap up, I have one question for Michelle. It's a question that she didn't get to answer. Going back to when I was talking about video game music and when Matthew brought up video game characters, what video game character do you enjoy playing most in any given setting?
I would have to go with Toad. Cute little Toad. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I will give Toad a nickname Toady. I would always play Mario Kart with Toad.
Nice. So you favor acceleration and speed over like boosts and good drifting. Nice.
I guess so.
Great.
Okay, so that will do it for today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you the next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We also want to thank Matt Klein for writing our awesome jingle for Surround Sound. Thanks, Matt.